Hi, my name is Mya Jenkins, Senior Environmental Educator at the New York Restoration Project, and today I'm here in the Bronx at the Bronx Target Community Garden. And today I'll be talking about how do you go through the steps of composting. So in bin 1, your drop-off bin, I think as a first step that would be really great is before you drop your plant material into the bin, you want to go ahead and break it into smaller pieces about the size of the palm of your hand. That way it'll be easier for those decomposers like the worms and those other insects to be able to eat this plant material and eat it at the same rate, because all of your plant material decomposes at different time frames. So what I mean, an orange peel may take about a month to decompose, whereas something like more of a woody substance will take about several months to decompose. So the smaller that you can make those pieces, the easier it'll be for those decomposers to eat all of that plant material about at the same ratio. So for the first pile, you could use this tool, which we call a lopper. And a lopper is great for not having to spend a lot of time breaking plant material with your hands. So my suggestion is always blade end downward, and you go and you find some fresh plant material that you know is still large in size, definitely not the size of the palm of our hands. And we want to look for that type of plant material to just help chop down into smaller pieces. If you know that you're really here to help turn the compost, I would say never try to break material that's this size. You know that this is probably going to be too strong for the blade. And this plant material, if you could break it with your hand, do so. If not, just leave it as is. This coconut husk, maybe this is something that you definitely want to use the tool for, to be able to just make everybody's lives a little easier. Ooh, what worm is eating that? Ooh, I was trying to be generous, but that's a lot of work. So you could just use this tool to definitely chop up your plant material. If you know that, hey, you come into the garden, you may have only about 10 minutes to work, I would suggest just take out some plant material from the top layer. There's nothing wrong with that. And grab it, place the wheelbarrow down, and place it in your wheelbarrow. That way, you'll be able to now know exactly the plant material that you're working on, and you'll be able to control it a little better. So you would then just kind of like poking around, several with the loppers, snipping around, and you're chopping up different plant material. Once I feel like I've gone around and chopped up some of this material, I'm gonna put the tool down, and then I'm just gonna turn the pile so that I'm making sure that I'm working, again, all this material that I placed in here. And I wanna try to get it to be all about the same size. This is like getting a hand chopper after you've done everything by hand for so long. It's no comparison. Then I would say I'll take it again. And as you can see, as I'm picking up the pile, a lot of it is now starting to drop. I can tell that's the material that I have chopped up. And you can see that it's about the same size. So I know that this is still in a bulk. So I'm gonna really focus on that area. And maybe this time, gonna put the loppers a little deeper into the pile so I can make sure that I'm not just cutting only this top visible layer, So most of the material now is finer in size, as you can see, and nowhere near even 10 minutes. So I said about 10 minutes, but you don't even have to spend a whole full 10 minutes chopping up the material. Again, every little bit counts. Scooping it out and doing at least a wheelbarrow full. If you had 3 or 4 people taking the leadership to take out the first top layer that they see of compost and do this on a weekly basis, that would be definitely a great contribution towards trying to achieve getting compost within 6 months or a little more. The reason I stress 6 months is because if you think about your gardening season, unfortunately summer is only so long. So you are really theoretically composting sort of for the end of your growing season, or you're composting for the beginning of your garden season. And that's something the group would need to think about. When do you really want this compost to be ready? Most people want it to be ready for the beginning of their compost season. So processing what you guys have, getting a lid over your finished bin, continuing to turn it on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis right now will be a great start to be able to work and process each bin and end up with whatever looks to be more fine and compost substance like. Then I would suggest maybe put hay or some straw that has definitely been approved by a farming company, so you know it's not dropping seeds into your compost. And you want to then allow that finished compost to finish over the winter and then the early spring. And by the time spring comes, whatever's in this finished product should have had enough time for the bacteria to kill off and really be finished. That final step can take anywhere from a couple of weeks to a month for the final bacteria to finish off. So how much you're really turning your last pile is a great way to help it get to that final stage of completion. So the first 3 bins are referred to as your composting. The final bin is referred to as compost because it's the finished product. This is producing that finished product. So as a suggestion, this bin should have finer compost substance like material. I would take some of the practices of taking these papers, taking the eggshells that it seems to be dressed with also, and just applying those practices to this bin as well. That way, when you're ready to say, hey, it really looks finer like compost, then that would be a great time to sift it and add it on to here. Something else to keep in mind, if this is your final product, you don't want to take something that's still working and apply it to your final product. Because remember, these are still composting. This is done, no bacteria. So you want to make sure that people are going to have room to be able to know, don't add that unfinished to the finish, or you're going to have to wait again another month for that bacteria to finish killing off. So when you're putting your plant material in, now that you've broken it up into smaller pieces, again about the size of the palm of your hand, you want to do what's called layering. So you want to add 2 ratios of you want to have a 2-to-1 ratio. So you want to have 2 layers of browns and 1 layer of green. Browns would be considered any dead plant material, any plant material that's no longer has a living form to it. A green is considered any fresh new plant material. So it can be from a plant you had growing, it can be a flower that was growing, anything that we can see that's fresh. We know when we go and snap it, it's still going to be a crisp, and we know that it's still moist. That's one way you can tell the difference between your fresh and your browns. So you want to make sure that you start off with a layer or 2 layers of your brown material. That way that layer will be able to absorb any moisture that is coming and seeping down into your bin. Then you go along with a layer of your green, your fresh plant material, and that is what is going to be providing a lot of the moisture that I was referring to that may seep down into your bin. You want to turn your bin at least every week. That way, again, you're making sure that all of your plant material is decomposing at the same ratio. It's also a great way to add natural oxygen into your plant material. And it's a great way to eliminate a lot of that additional moisture, which tends to bring odors to compost bins. So you can drop off plant material, or if you happen to have any fruit at home that's in an organic form, that's also great. But again, we want to make sure we're breaking it up into smaller pieces, because something of this substance, if it's really hard for us to break it, can you imagine these worms and these insects that don't have teeth, how long it's going to take them to be able to eat this plant material? So although this is organic, you want to make sure that we're being able to feed those insects. So break it up into smaller pieces. If this is about the smallest in size that you can get this outer shell, that's fine. It's small enough. Don't kill yourself. But we definitely don't want to leave it in a whole form, because again, it's really going to be hard for those insects to eat it. For me, I like to make compost in about 6 months, which seems like a big goal, but it's one that can be accomplished when you have a team effort. So if you're able to turn each bin on a weekly basis, then you're adding the right amount of airflow, and you're also feeding your compost only with the plants that are growing in your garden beds. Then you're also controlling, again, how fast your compost will be able to decompose. So with solely organic material coming from your garden beds and turning it on a weekly or even a bi-weekly basis, you can actually have finished compost in 6 months. But you have to make sure that you're monitoring it and keeping track of the different plant material you have. So again, putting peanuts in, that's great, but you do know that it's going to end up growing a peanut, which is going to prolong that finish process. So if we went from 6 months and now we know things are growing in our compost pile, you know that your pile is not in a finished stage. It still has what we would call live bacteria in there, and that's a sign that it's not ready to be applied yet. So the fact that this peanut shell is able to start growing in this moist bin, we know that it still has bacteria alive in it right now, and it's not in the stage of being complete. Complete would mean we really don't find much decomposers in there. You really wouldn't find worms, because the worm's job is to eat the plant material. You wouldn't really find many centipedes, because again, the centipede's job is to eat the plant material. So you would now probably find a couple of roly-polies, but essentially you wouldn't find many decomposers. So if you wanted to work in your finish pile, you want to make sure that you're constantly turning this last bin. And you're turning this last bin and sifting it so that you can eliminate any plant material or any seeds that are in here. So you want to put 2 to 3 scoops on your sifter, and then I like to say you're just really going back and forth, kind of like a DJ. You don't want to press on the screen. You want to just use your fingertips mainly to have that fine like soil substance, our compost, be able to go through the bottom. Any large particles, we want to make sure they stay on top, and that we take them again and throw them back into the second bin, because we know that second bin is really still processing the plant material, opposed to your third bin, which is close to the stage of being done. So you want to go ahead and sift this, and any additional material Again, you can just lift the sifter if that's possible for you and take it and dump that content back here on the top. Any trash that you may have found, you want to make sure that the trash is not going back into your pile, and take it to the garbage can. Anything that you just finished sifting, you can use your hands and sprinkle it back on into the pile, and then you can essentially just mix the whole entire pile with that compost that you just sifted, because you know that it's been aerated and it's nice and fluffy now. And now you're also moving the remainder compost that you didn't get a chance to sift, but it did get a chance to get some air.